Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Well, it feels like a particularly terrible and painful time to acknowledge the birthday of America, doesn't it? Thinking back on the promise and the hope and the desire for a better and more equal future at our country's founding, and now this. With the passage of the big, terrible bill, we know this country will now become less inhabitable for those trying to make a life for themselves here. I have been feeling for a while now that the midbar, the desert, the wilderness, is an appropriate metaphor for the time that we're in. And not the beginning of the wandering, not the beginning of wandering the desert where everything is new and different, and perhaps it's difficult, but there's a sense of coming together to build the Mishkan or to figure out the manna or to wander together. No, the part that we're in is the next part, the next 38 years. Nothing is new anymore. We know what the drudge and the pain of wandering without purpose feels like. We know how harsh the conditions can be. We know that there is not currently an easy end in sight. We are in the exhaustion phase of the midbar, the part where it becomes clear that although there is a promised land in the future, it's not necessarily close by. And I think we have to start thinking of these next few years as a significant part of our desert journey. That's also where we happen to be in this week's Parsha, in Parshat Chukat. We're nearing the end of the book of the Midbar, which details the wandering journey of Bnei Israel. And perhaps more than any other book, it's the book of the Torah that deals with the trials and tribulations and frustrations that Bnei Israel goes through. And this Parsha, Parshat Chukat, is actually the turning point between the years before and the last year, the 40th year that they enter into that final year in the desert. And in this time of extended wandering, we get this statement at the beginning of this Parsha, near the beginning. Vayavo b'nei Israel kol ha'eda midbar Tzin, and all of Israel came into the wilderness of Tzin, and Miriam died there. So now, not only have the Israelites been trudging through the desert for over 30 years, but they are dealing with a major loss. A loss not only of leadership, but a loss of the heart and soul of the Edah, of the congregation. I'm extrapolating just a little bit, but I don't think it's that hard to imagine that Bnei Israel has three leaders. Moses, who's the intercessor with God, brilliant, but a little hard to relate to. Aaron, who becomes the peacekeeper among the people, but who is often at a remove from Bnei Israel. And then there's Miriam, who is the nourishment giver, who makes sure that there is access to life-giving water even amidst the harshest and toughest conditions. And now she's gone. And with her, there is also the loss of the miraculous well that's been with them this whole time, which, as we know, leads to Moses' attempt at getting water from the rock, which does not go that well. We too are suffering a loss right now. A loss of ideals, a loss of clear and moral leadership, a loss of belief in the system that is meant to work for us, not against us. And it's a heartbreaking loss amidst a time where we already feel exhausted and that we are without a compass. I was particularly struck when reading through the Parsha by where Miriam's death happened, in Midbar Tzin, the wilderness of Tzin. And it turns out that Tzin has two potential translations. The first is thorns. Tzinim are thorns. The place where Miriam dies is known as the wilderness of thorns. And this feels particularly poignant. Where was Bnei Israel when they felt like all hope was lost? They were in the thorny place, the place where no matter where they turned, they were stung and scarred. And it feels like a pretty apt metaphor for our time, doesn't it? The commentators are not all in agreement about the meaning of Midbar Tzin, but they do bring a proof text for how you might read Tzin as thorns, or how you might know that Tzin means thorns. And it comes immediately following Miriam's death. In their despair, Israel takes to complaining and griping. And they say, "Why did you make us leave Egypt to die here in the wilderness? There is no bread and there is no water, and we have come to loathe this miserable food." Except in the Hebrew, the word that's used for loathing is v'nafshenu katsah. Our souls have become thorny. with this cursed bread. Nafshenu katsa. And I just love that phrasing, our souls have become thorny. Because don't you feel like that's true for us? Haven't our souls also become thorny and sharp-edged? And who can blame us? I'm heartbroken by the news from Washington, not just that millions will now be without life-saving health care and access to food, quite literally also the loss of nourishment like the Israelites after Miriam's death, but also that we seem to be giving a megaphone to the worst voices among us, those that preach hatred and fear of the other, those whose greatest wish is to turn us against one another and make us feel ashamed. It is a normal response to, at the very minimum, feel a little bit thorny. And I would say this is also true for Bnei Israel. How could they not feel at their wits' end? Nothing has gone their way for quite some time, and now they are tired, exhausted, and thirsty. I think they've earned their thorniness as well. However, it's also clear that to stay in the thorny place forever is not the answer. A nation that can only say, wouldn't it be better if we went back in time? Or we would be so much better off dead than we are now. That's not just an acknowledgement of the thorns of the moment, but instead it becomes a commitment to endless suffering and a dining on bitterness towards the world around us. I don't think that's what the lesson of 40 years in the desert is trying to teach us. So let me turn now to the other interpretation of Midbar Tzin, which is that Sin is actually just a corruption of Midbar Sin, or Sinai, as in Har Sinai. This entire time that Bnei Israel has been wandering, it turns out they've actually been walking in a giant circle, and they're now back to where they began, at Har Sinai. However, surprise, the word Sinai, also has a connection with thorns. Sinai is connected to the word sneh. You can hear it, sneh, Sinai. The bush, the small and lowly bush that Hashem appeared to Moshe in at the beginning of this entire journey. And there seems to be rabbinic consensus that this sneh, this bush, was in fact a thorn bush. There has been much rabbinic commentary over time about why did God choose to reveal God's self to Moshe from the sneh, from the thorn bush. And there are many great answers that we could explore. But as I was researching this time, there was one answer that caught my eye more than others, which is that midrashically, apparently, Moshe was actually at the bush for 7 days. And for 7 days, he pleaded with God, please choose someone else. Please not me. Please let someone else be your shaliach, your agent. I am not a man of words. I am slow of speech. Shouldn't it be somebody with more authority or more power or more status than me? Please let it be anybody else. And God says to him, don't worry about your status. I will be with you. And that is why I have shown myself to you from this bush. Just like this bush is burning with fire and is not consumed, so too you shall be able to do this mission, and it shall not eat you alive. It shall not consume you. I think there's a greater parable here, which is that we are allowed to be angry. We are allowed to be bitter, but we are not allowed to let it consume us entirely so that all we are is angry or bitter. We can say this moment is too great for us. It requires too much. The task is too enormous. The journey is too long or too harsh or too challenging. But we cannot let those feelings devour us or destroy us. We must behave like the sneh, like the thorn bush, and allow ourselves to be burning with the fire of anger, but to not let that fire exhaust us. Let me offer one more proof that I think the thorns of the desert are not meant only to stymie us. There's an Agadah, a rabbinic story, that says that the Mishkan was built to anticipate all of the Israelites' needs and to provide miracles for them as they walked through the desert. Specifically, here it says that the kruvim, the cherubim, the winged golden figures that sit above the ark in the Mishkan, that there's a spark, sort of like a mystical spark that would emit from between the two kruvim, and those sparks would then go and burn up all the scorpions and snakes and thorns in the Israelites' path. And then the smoke that rose from the burnt thorn bushes gave out a beautiful fragrance, so that as Bnei Israel approached any place, other nations would say, Who is that coming out of the desert with so much beauty? Mizot olam min hamidbar. Literally, from the ashes of that which served to beat them down is where something beautiful and something innovative came from. So I don't think it's an accident that Miriam's death, the Israelites' first big loss, and we will later get Aaron's death actually in this very same parsha, and also Moshe's overwhelming frustration and ultimately his overtaking exhaustion and anger at the rock comes in this place, the place that is known as the wilderness of thorns, Midbar Tzin. I think it's a cautionary tale to all of us as we also muddle through the wilderness of where we are. We will also suffer losses, both the ones that we've already suffered and the ones that are still to come. We will also be overwhelmed to the point of frustration and seething anger, and yet the work continues. The journey is not over. Yes, we should allow ourselves a moment to be distressed, or more than a moment. But the goal is to use that distress to light a fire that then lights the way through these next years of strain and hardship. A fire that brings about just as much beauty and sweet-smelling resistance as the force with which they are trying to crush us. A fire that causes everyone else to say, "Who is that rising up out of the ashes of tyranny, ready to fight?" And a fire that ultimately burns bright but does not consume us. We are in the thorny, desolate place right now. There's no denying that. But the Torah, the teaching of these thorns, is that they will hopefully also be the place where God, and also our own ability to work toward the mission of greater success, greater access, and greater freedom for everyone, is illuminated and born. So here is to the work ahead. Shabbat Shalom.